Part two originally had a different ending that we had to change. Had we not had to do that, I might not have been in part three.
Casual horror fans, even if you're not into extreme gore, would really enjoy those two characters, especially Art the Clown, if you're a horror fan.
First of all, I just have to say how cool it's been to see your growth as a filmmaker with each Terrifier entry. I was really impressed with 3, and I'm so excited to pick your brain about this.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I'm trying.
What was the biggest challenge that you had this time around in regards to the kills?
Oh my gosh, just because the expectations are so high this time. Part 2 sort of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. So they walked into that movie not knowing what they were in for. So we got them good on that one, but now everybody's primed. They're ready to go. And now it's like, all right, what do you got for me now? Because they're ready for it. So that was tricky because I could imagine things that are really repulsive and reprehensible, and we could really go there. But I always try and challenge myself to walk the line, step right over the line, and push the boundaries a little bit, but at the same time maintaining this level of mass appeal, so to speak, because I think that honestly, the Art the Clown character and the Sienna character, I think they deserve that. I think casual horror fans, even if you're not into extreme gore, would really enjoy those two characters, especially Art the Clown, if you're a horror fan. He's so sort of charming and quirky and funny. He's likable. In one moment, you want to be his friend, and the next moment, you want to run out of the theater because he's doing something so sadistic, and then he wins you back and you want to be his friend again. So it's a cool character to spend a couple of hours with, for sure, if you're a horror fan. So I don't want to alienate the vast majority of the audience, is what I'm trying to do with this gore, but at the same time I'm trying to push the boundaries.
So first of all, I have to ask, how did you come to get involved with the Terrifier series?
I was a big fan of the first movie. We discovered it on the Fozzy tour bus, and I was the first person that I knew was talking about it. So I was going on Talk is Jericho, my podcast, and letting everybody know about this movie that you have to see, because I have a big horror fan contingency for the show. And then I did a Comic-Con, HorrorCon, I guess, where David was there and he was on Talk is Jericho. And that's kind of how it all started. I was like, you guys got to watch this movie, Terrifier this, Terrifier that. And I'd like to think that I was part of the one of the grassroots movement to turn people onto this film. And then once it became, kind of a talked about cult hit, when Damien started talking about doing part 2, he asked me if I wanted to be involved. And I was like, of course. Just tell me what time and what mental institution in Staten Island I have to be at.
Well, and last year when we spoke, you said you were prepping one of your favorite kills ever for Terrifier 3. Can you say which kill that was that you were referring to?
Oh, it was probably the rat kill at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If I was saying it way back then, because the shower massacre came later. For sure. Yeah, it was probably the rat kill was supposed to be so much worse, so much more graphic. And that's sort of the idea of it is horrible, of course. But on film, it's kind of the images flash by so quickly. It's almost like you're getting subliminal shots of what's happening. But at the same time, that might make it even worse because then your imagination's kind of taking over. And one of my favorite scenes is besides sound design, it's all imagination, is something Art does in the first 5 minutes. Which is anti-Terrifier. Terrifier is always in your face. You see everything. And I wanted to go in a different direction for that opening 5-minute kill. Yeah.
The opening is my favorite. I loved that so much. Like, just it's the perfect balance of just building up, but then such a proper payoff. Because I always feel like a kill, it's like a good joke. It needs that proper setup and punchline. And there's just the setup is so good there, and then obviously the punchline is just, holy crap, did they do that?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm proud of that too. It's one of my favorite scenes in this film.
And outside of your own, which was your favorite kill in the movie?
I think the shower scene was kind of the Catherine Corcoran upside down sawing, or the bedroom scene from 2. That kind of was the one for me that was like, oh, that's this is going above and beyond.
Well, and you've turned down studio money in order to maintain your creative vision for Terrifier. That must have been a very complicated decision. Can you talk a little bit about that choice?
It was, because there's certainly the appeal, the allure of Hollywood, and I've never been in the Hollywood system, and I got to sit down in boardrooms with the friggin' heads of studios. It was such a cool. It was like a week worth of meetings. It was the coolest thing ever for me, because I'm not used to that. That's not where I come from. This just indie amateur, filmmaker that suddenly it was thrust into this situation. So that was super cool. But the artistic integrity of this franchise is so important to me. It's paramount, trumps everything. And I just knew based on conversations. And to be fair, because I've said this, I've spoken about this, and then it gets twisted a lot. And they make it seem like these evil studio people who just wanted to come in and destroy Terrifier. I mean, like that's not really what happened by any means. They were actually really cool about it, and they were curious about what I did. And but I could tell based on the conversations we were having that I was gonna certainly have a lot of limitations and a lot of eyes over my shoulders. And like they would tell me, clearly this has to be an R-rated movie. You can't go as crazy as you've been with the gore. So that was one thing. Another thing I heard was we sort of want to rebrand this for a mass audience now, because a lot of people still don't know what Terrifier is. So we don't really want to make Terrifier 3. We kind of want to just call it Terrifier again. I mean, that was one discussion. And just hearing all those things, I'm like, nah, I don't want to have to be arguing and fighting these battles. It's hard enough to make a movie, and to have to persuade people to go with my vision is the last thing I want or need at this point in my career. I just didn't need a Hollywood studio behind this movie. We've been making them low budget, this entire time. So it had to make total sense for me to give this movie up to a studio, no matter what they were throwing at me or how cool the opportunity was. I mean, if I went with a studio and we made this, I could probably have like a 3-picture deal lined up with, it'd be life changing. But I care so much about this franchise for what it is, and it just being genuine to me, and especially the fan base. The last thing they would ever tolerate is me selling out at this point. It's not what I want to do. It's not what they want. They want to keep this as genuine as possible. So that's where I'm at.
I think that's a great mindset to have with it. And without getting into spoilers, there's a pretty big character death in the film. However, You're very smart about how you shoot it, and there's a reasonable doubt that it's even who Art says it is.
Oh, thank you, man.
So I have to ask, did that character actually die, or maybe will we get some clarification in 4?
Am I allowed to say?
Yeah, I'll put up a spoiler thing. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Yes, that character did in fact die. Yeah. And that's a very, I could tell already, very polarizing aspect of this film, especially the way it was executed, pun intended, I guess. A lot of people wanted to absolutely see that character get murdered, and I didn't want to. I felt it was disrespectful to the character. I care too much about that character. It would be very cruel. There's a few reasons why it wasn't smart. If you go back and watch Terrifier 2 again, I think things will make a lot more sense. I think there's just too much being thrown at the audience upon first viewing. Another reason it wouldn't work is because it would have had to take place right after the biggest kill scene in the movie. So it would have had absolutely no impact on the audience whatsoever. They would have been completely desensitized at that moment. Another reason is there's a very important misdirect that's going on with that character's death. You're supposed to think it's another character who was killed. So there's many reasons why I decided to go in that direction. And if I didn't, I think it would have been the wrong decision.
Obviously, I don't think that this is a big spoiler. It seems pretty obvious that you're not going to make it to the end. So I have to ask, what was it like to die in one of the most prolific horror series of the modern era?
Well, it's funny because part 2 originally had a different ending that we had to change. So had we not had to do that, I might not have been in part 3. So I'm kind of one of the rare characters that appears in 2 Terrifier films, because like you said, most people don't last too long in these movies. Yeah, it was really surreal to watch, myself get desecrated facially by not just Art, but by Victoria as well. We digitally did a scan to create this kind of head that looked just like me. We do the scene. They come towards me. There's blood everywhere. Cut. Put my little head in there. Rip everything off that they're ripping off and sticking what they're sticking into my holes. And I'm watching.
They did it digitally. It wasn't an actual physical.
No, they digitally did a mold of my head. So then it comes out as a physical mold. Back in the past, they would use plaster, all that sort of stuff. This is now done digitally, like doing an action figure. So they do the scan, and then it actually comes out physically like a 3D printer sort of a thing. So this face that you could pick up and hold and look at looked like me, felt like skin, beard, hair, everything. Very, very intricate.
Please tell me you got to hold the face.
Oh yeah, I got to hold the face and caress the face, and because it feels. You see the scene. I mean, spoiler alert: the jaw gets ripped off, and the skin is sticking. And it literally goes like it's fucked up, man. Because I was literally watching them do it right behind the camera, and it's terrible because it's like that's my face, like here. But yeah, it was really cool to see it, and I thought, wow, this death is crazy. Everyone's going to be talking about it. Meanwhile, there's like 15 other kills that are way worse than like mine in any other movie would be the most disgusting kill. In Art the Clown in Terrifier 3, it's like, She Said by the Beatles. It's like any other band would be a huge hit, but for the Beatles, it's like 40th on the list.
That is very true. There's so many like heavy hitter deaths in this. And I love that you set Terrifier 3 at Christmas. I love some good Christmas horror movies, but I also love that this doesn't explicitly feel like only a Christmas movie. Like you could watch this at any time of the year. So, but I have to ask, were there any elements from any Christmas horror movies that you wanted to make sure that you paid direct homage to?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you said that too, because I feel the same way in terms of it. It's there's so much Christmas in it, but I agree with you. It just doesn't feel like typical Christmas horror movies for some reason. I don't know, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I agree with you. I think it just works as a straight horror movie, regardless of the setting. But I pay so much homage to Black Christmas in this one for sure. Especially, I mean, you see scenes in the trailer, Art in the rocking chair, looking out the window of the attic. I mean, that's my favorite. But my all-time favorite Christmas episode is from Tales from the Crypt, the 90s show, and it's called And All Through the House. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. To me, even more so than Black Christmas, that's the ultimate template for this film because there's nothing to me creepier / cozier than a maniac Santa Claus in a Christmas setting. I love that ever since I was a kid, and I never would have imagined that I would make one of those because I don't know. You have Silent Night, Deadly Night, you have the Tales from the Crypt. It's like, what am I going to do that's drastically different? But now that I could put Art the Clown in that costume, it makes the Santa Claus maniac trope fresh again in my eye. So it was the perfect opportunity for me to have fun with that trope.
And I know you're a big horror fan yourself, so I have to ask, what are some of your favorite Christmas horror films?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, I think Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 is kind of the gold standard.
Oh, the second one.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
Nice.
Or is it the first one, which is the one that has the toboggan scene?
No, that's in the first. Well, the second one, the second one's weird because it essentially has like it's a retelling of the first one.
That's right. They just so strike that from the record. Silent Night, Deadly Night is the gold standard, I would say. Yeah, because 2 is just basically one rehashed over again.
With the garbage day meme thing.
Garbage day. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I also really like the original Tales from the Crypt with the killer Santa Claus with Joan Collins. Yeah, that one still gets me. I love that original Tales from the Crypt. There's something really creepy about the early 70s British horror. I don't think Tales is a Hammer film, but it might as well be. It's got that same vibe to it. And it's literally scary to me. It's a lot of horror movies are kind of like funny, much like Terrifier 2, 3, and 1. Tales from the Crypt is not. It's got humorous moments, but it's overall a very ominous feeling. I get that from Terrifier 3 as well, in the best possible way.
Is there any other kind of trope or gimmick like that you're interested in pursuing with the Terrifier series? Like New York as a setting, things like that.
Art taking Manhattan, going to space. I think about all these things, but honestly, not particularly. I mean, it's too soon. I can't give away spoilers, but there's certainly some things I want to pay homage to in the next Terrifier film from other films. I always love doing that because I'm so inspired by those movies that I love paying tribute to them. I question, for instance, the shower scene in Terrifier 3. That's clearly inspired by Psycho, obviously, right? Not trying to hide that. So it's my homage to Psycho and Scarface. There's a shower scene with a chainsaw in Scarface. Both of those scenes heavily affected me when I was younger. And I still watch Psycho all the time. And I just said, if Hitchcock made that today, would he be as sort of subdued or as he was, or would he be more graphic with what he could show now with a modern audience? And I said, if I was given the opportunity to remake Psycho, which I'll never be given that opportunity, I would show everything that knife could possibly do to the human body. So it's kind of that approach. It's like, hey, I want to take my shot at the Psycho shower scene, but it won't be a knife. It'll be a chainsaw. Everything's got to be bigger. It won't be one person. It'll be two people. So that's sort of how I do pay homage. And ultimately, it turns into something fresh, even though it's heavily inspired by something so iconic.
Yeah, there are some kills in this movie that I was absolutely shocked by.
Which one got you? Which one got you?
Any of the kids?
Yeah, that's something. In horror movies, the rule is that the kids always make it. Not in this one.
How much time outside of your filming time were you able to spend on set?
We didn't have a lot of time. This was one of those really cool things where there was a window where they had to film, and they literally called me like a week before, like, we want you to be in 3. We need you in Staten Island, same place where we filmed 2, on Wednesday. And I was like, well, dude, I was actually having to go on tour with Fozzy in the UK. And so I was like, well, I guess it's not going to work out. And I was like, well, stop. Like, I never do don't tell me why it's not going to work out. Let's figure out a way to make it work out. So we were able to kind of condense it all into one, 12, 14-hour shoot. So I was basically in and out over the course of one day, but we got it all done. And that's the most important thing.
Well, and speaking of the UK, I saw there were walkouts in the UK at some recent screenings. Could you ask for better advertisement for your movie?
You literally can't. Like, I think the best thing that ever happened for 2 was when somebody, puked in the theater, and that went viral. I mean, I remember reading about it in USA Today, and they're talking about it on The View. And that's why, 2 ended up doing $15 million in the theater. It was only supposed to be in the theater for like a week. And then because all of this stuff happened, people passing out and vomiting and, protesting and all this stuff, suddenly it's in the theater for a month. And then, Terrifier 3's budget goes up by, 100%, 500%, whatever it is. And that's all good stuff because, like you mentioned, you can't buy that type of publicity. And there's so many horror movies out now. When something like that happens, people are going to take notice.
Well, and have you got to watch the movie with a crowd yet?
Yeah, I watched it in Austin at Fantastic Fest. And
what was that experience like?
It's a very Terrifier 3 friendly crowd because it's it's a screening. So everybody's cheering and they're all into it. But I think when it gets out into the wild on Friday, I might want to go check it out in a theater with people that don't know what to expect. Oh, the horror movie, clown movie, I'll go. Trust me, this goes above and beyond anything you've ever seen before when it comes to horror movie violence. It is batshit, depraved, crazy.
Well, and you've been getting pretty involved in the horror world. Do you have any upcoming projects that my audience should be excited for?
It's funny. I did another film called Dark Match that Lowell Dean did. He did Wolf Cop, the Wolf Cop movies. And the cool thing is Dark Match is screening and Terrifier is screening. And a documentary that I produced called Death Tour is screening. So I've been to like fucking 8 premieres over the last month and a half. It's like I feel like I'm Brad Pitt or something like that. There's actually a really famous, prestigious film festival in Spain called Sitges, Sitges. And Dark Match and Terrifier 3 were playing on the same day. So there you go. I'm Mr. Film now.
That must be very vindicating for you.
It is, yeah. Dark Match is great too. When you guys start seeing that coming out, it's a really cool film. So to be involved and not just one, but two really, really cool horror movies coming out at the same time. Very proud of it for sure.